Hey guys, welcome to A Taste for Life and to today's video, working with an eating disorder versus working in eating disorder recovery. My name is Rebecca. I was diagnosed with anorexia in 2013 and have been in recovery since early last year, 2022. And something that I've come across recently and that's very interesting is what it's like to work with an eating disorder compared to what it's like to work when you're in recovery from an eating disorder. Now, it's probably worth mentioning that during my 10 plus years having an eating disorder, I had been working full-time, part-time, casually, not working for a period of time, volunteering for another period of time. So I've pretty much done everything across the spectrum that you can imagine employment-wise whilst having an eating disorder and also whilst in recovery from an eating disorder. And what I've found is very surprising and not what I expected. So one of the big motivators that people use for eating disorder recovery is the fact that their life will go back to a sense of normality. So eating disorders have its own schedule, its own rules. It looks different for everyone, but essentially there's an element of control that can sometimes restrict certain components or a lot of components of your life. And for me, one of the key motivating factors was being able to get back to work full time. Now, when I started my self-recovery, I took a period of time off work completely. So I was not employed at all. I was making videos for this channel, but that's basically it. That's all I was doing. And apart from that, it was about, re-nourishing my body. It was about working on my meal plans. It was about re-establishing connections and relationships that maybe went a little bit neglected or that I just wanted to build on. And so for me, a lot of my time was occupied with that, and that was great. And that was an expected part of recovery. Everyone talks about the need to take a little bit of time off, and I would personally think it's pretty vital to at least my recovery process because it gives me that space to figure things out without the additional pressure of having to do a job. So after a period of time, I went back to work part-time, and that was really good. It was a couple hours every day of the week, and that was fine. That was a great balance. It worked really well for me. And then eventually I moved into a full-time position. And that was going great. I have no issues with working full time. My eating did slip a little bit because some of the issues I have around my eating disorder are eating in front of other people, eating in public areas. So for me, it was quite confronting going to the staff room, and it's quite a large work environment that I'm in. So there were lots of people amongst me while I was eating, and figuring out things that I could eat during my lunch break was a little bit difficult. So there was a minor setback there, but I got into a better routine. And then additional problems arose with my sleeping, which led to a loss of appetite, and there was another slip there. But essentially, I haven't worked since, I'd say, early March of this year. So I have had a lot of months off. But during that time, I have been really working on self-improvement. So initially I couldn't work because of these sleeping issues that I was talking about, but the eating disorder was triggered by these eating issues because the lack of sleep meant that I had a lack of appetite, meant that I restricted, or maybe not intentionally restricted, but didn't want to eat, so didn't eat during that period. Then it led to a period of restriction, and finally I was able to put myself on a really good meal plan, start weight restoring, and I feel the best I've ever felt physically and mentally, and just with my whole relationship around food. For the past 10 years, this is the best I've ever felt. So you'd think going back to full-time work would be a big tick in one of the things that was my motivator being accomplished, but it doesn't actually work that way. So the funny thing is, I don't know if it's just because I had my eating disorder for such a long time or if this is something that happens for everyone, but because my eating disorder was an ongoing issue, I learned how to adapt my life to the eating disorder. So I was able to hold down a full-time job for a large portion of my 10-year span with this eating disorder because I created a routine around work. So I knew that a nuclear thing that I had to accomplish every week was going to work every single day. So I could account for that with my eating disorder. I could put any meals I wanted around it, and I could put any exercise routines that I wanted to do around it. And so essentially, as long as I was working and doing my exercise routine and fitting in meals where I wanted to, then I was accomplished in my life. I didn't need anything else, and anything else that happened was a cherry on top, like it was an additional bonus. And that's kind of how the eating disorder, I think, lasted for such a long time, because for so long, I didn't actually feel like I was missing out on anything. Say, for example, we had a birthday dinner. I would still go to the restaurant and sit with my family. Didn't mean that I necessarily had to eat anything, but I was there socially. So for me, that was a tick. I wasn't missing out on anything. I had my full-time job. I'm not missing out on anything. I'm recreationally exercising, not missing out on anything. Having my meals when I need to, not missing out. And so for a long time, there was no motivator to get better or to change, because the routine I had built incorporated both a professional life, a social life, and an eating disorder life. But what I found wanting to go forward was that my employment did taper off, and that was mostly due to the amount of inpatient admissions I was having, but also the nature of my job changed. I went from an office job to a more physical job, and I found that my body responded in a different manner as it would. So I went part-time for a little bit, as I've explained, and then more recently went full-time. And again, because of the sleeping issues, things happen. I had to take time off. But what I'm finding now that I'm in recovery in a different space, so I've really gone to eating disorder recovery to a new level that I haven't experienced before. What I'm finding in regards to work is that although I'm in the best place I've ever been with my eating disorder, I'm going back to work really gradually. So for context, I'm beginning work again next week, which is fabulous, but I'm going back for 2 days of the 5-day working week. And then the following week, it'll be 3 days. And then eventually I'm going to build up to a 4-day week where it's still not full time. That would still be considered part-time. But that's actually what I'm aiming for at the moment. And it's funny because I thought once my eating is better, once my relationship with food is better, once I feel better in my meal plan, once I'm weight restored or weight restoring, and I can physically do the job again and mentally do the job again, then cool, everything will be fine and I'll be able to work full time again. But the thing with eating disorders is sometimes they are a mask for other things. Sorry guys, go to part 2 for the rest of working with an eating disorder versus working in recovery from an eating disorder.